We are encouraging the president to allow all of those that have been here, that are ready to come forward with their fingerprints and submit to a security and background check, to be able to be legalized.
Welcome back. We're talking about the sweeping victory for Republicans in the U.S. elections and its impact on key issues. Joining us from Georgetown University is presidential historian Stephen Wayne. Here in the studio, Simon Marks. He's the global affairs correspondent for Feature Story News. And with us from Beirut is Al Hayat's senior diplomatic correspondent, Raghida Dergham. Immigration, Simon, one of the big issues. The president has not done much on this, despite election promises to do something about it. We heard there a congressman talk about moving on this issue. Are we going to see any movement on this?
I can't imagine you're going to see meaningful movement on it. This is a massive Achilles heel for Barack Obama. He had the opportunity when he was first elected to office and enjoyed majorities on Capitol Hill to make good on the pledge, engage in comprehensive immigration reform, get it done. He didn't get it done. His supporters would contend because he was far too busy dealing with trying to revive the American economy, but not getting it done and now trying to get it done under circumstances when he's facing hostile majorities in Congress and Republicans who are really going to want to make an issue of this on the presidential campaign trail in 2016. It's an inordinately high bar for him to meet, and I think one has to conclude it will be a promise that remains unfulfilled.
Professor Wayne, if we look at Barack Obama's track record, we've got the economy, which has shown growth in the third quarter, 3.5%. Unemployment is down, national debt is down, but it all seems to have gone unnoticed by the electorate. Why is that?
Well, I think, and I'm speculating here, that the Great Recession that we had a traumatic effect on the American electorate. Jobs going abroad, houses losing their value, unemployment shooting up. For many people, this was very, very scary. And that fear remains, even though the economic indicators are stronger now. Economic conditions are better, but economic perceptions have not changed. And that may change over time, but it's going to take some time to do that. Also, the health care, only went into effect in 2014. So the impact of that, other than for the 8 million people who have insurance now, is also not clear. In short, the jury is still out on whether the Obama policies are going to change conditions permanently and for the better.
Okay, Raghida, let me go to you, and I want to quote something that was in the Financial Times. It was the columnist Gideon Ruchman who said this about the election. He said, "It's entertaining for us," and he means people who live in other countries, "but irrelevant."
Well, I tell you, this is a very relevant election for the people of this region. This is a very important one for this region. This region really builds a lot of emphasis and waits impatiently to learn about what's going on with American foreign policy, because it impacts their very being. So therefore, I think it is very relevant to the people of this region. When you see a shift in the Congress with the Republicans taking the lead, I think this is, from the point of view of this region, it's going to impact the policies of the president. Now, the president has come in with a lot of charm, and he's really now being scrutinized with disappointment. His legacy so far stops at his backing down during the chemical issue with Syria. That's the vision of President Obama in this region. If he wants Iran legacy, I don't think he's going to get it. When he first started out, he spoke of the Palestinian-Israeli issue, hoping that he was going to be able to resolve it. I don't think this is going in a good direction. In fact, it may explode further. And then there is ISIL. And then there is terrorism, that if it does go back to the United States, or if this fight against ISIL is being conducted in the way it is, without any clarity, without explaining even to the allies what's in it for them, it's going to be complicated. This region is not going to be, they're watching every minute what's happening, and for now, they welcome. My feeling is that there is a welcome of the Republicans rather than having it all in the hands of President Obama.
Okay, Raghida Dergham, we have to say goodbye to you now, but we will continue the conversation with our other two guests. Simon, let me ask you about turnout. You were talking about it earlier on. We know that from initial polling, exit polling, that there wasn't a big turnout among Hispanic voters, but there was an increased turnout among Asian American voters.
Yes, that's true, but when you look at the core constituencies that sort of abandoned Barack Obama in this campaign, millennial voters, look at the turnout figures for young voters. I mean, they're never reliable in terms of their decision to show up at the polls, but they were abysmal yesterday. Latino voters abandoned him in droves because he hasn't delivered that immigration reform that we talked about. And while Asian Americans are an increasing and growing section of the electorate demographically, they don't only hew one way in terms of the way in which they vote, and they're not quite as reliable a core constituency for him. I mean, in terms of the relevance of this election, it seems to me that it underscores this notion that the United States has a governance problem. If Barack Obama faced difficulty getting things done with Congress for the last 5 or 6 years, he's going to find it absolutely impossible to get very much done over the course of the next 2 years. And now we're going into this presidential electoral cycle. So for another 2-year period, we're going to be totally focused on who moves into the White House, who orders the new China, who orders the new curtains in January 2017.
Right.
It sort of suggests to the rest of the world that, you know, the governing structures here, the systems, have got a problem.
Professor Wayne, Simon Marks talks about governance in the U.S. system, and that, of course, brings up that word gridlock. We've heard that so often, that the system is now in gridlock, and the Republican Party has been known for a long time as the party of no. Is that going to continue now, the party of no? And the other part of my question is, what do Democrats have to do to unlock that logjam?
Well, first of all, the election is important because when government is divided, blame is placed on the president. Now you have a unified Congress, so the Republicans really have to agree on policy proposals, and the president cannot just be a just say no president. So I think this breaks the gridlock for at least the first year in 2015, where I think moderate, incremental programs, including some in the immigration area, not amnesty, of course, but some programs can get through, and I think it may actually improve perceptions of government, or if it doesn't do that, at least it shares blame more equally between the Republicans and the Democrats during the next election cycle. I'm not quite as pessimistic as I was before the election, because I think the Republicans need a record to run on, just as the Democrats need a record to run on, and I think there will be pressure on both sides to compromise.
And the other point, Simon, is that the Republican Party, although they have the majority in both houses right now, is not a monolithic party. They are divided. We have people like Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, who has said, well, he's not going to listen to the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. He's got another agenda, which is more extreme,
absolutely,
more to the right.
And you have to take with a pound of salt this notion that because the Republicans triumphed in these midterm elections, they are absolutely set for a fantastic run at the presidency in 2016. They still don't have an obvious candidate who can, in the first instance, win the support of the party, particularly conservatives in the party, and then go on to run the kind of centrist campaign that is needed to be run if you're actually going to win the keys to the White House. I'm not convinced that the Republicans will suddenly put their pitchforks down and engage in acts of compromise with the president for this reason. These are the Republicans who shut the government down. And when they shut the government down, the chattering classes here in Washington, D.C. said, these people are crazy. They're throwing it away. They'll be punished by the electorate. Well, guess what? They weren't punished by the electorate at all. So if you are one of those bomb-throwing Republicans who did close the government down, you're saying, well, punish me this time around. Why would they punish me again for refusing to compromise with a president with whom we don't have a warm and fuzzy personal relationship? At a very personal level, they don't like him, he doesn't like them. That's a real problem in terms of compromise.
Okay, Stephen Wayne, when we look at the gridlock in Washington, is there a danger here for the Republicans that if they continue to be intransigent on moving on with legislation, that they will be seen as a party that cannot govern, and then that will have an impact on them in the 2016 presidential election?
Well, I think that may be the case, and I also think that when they did close the government down, The Republican Party, in terms of its image, decreased. There was more negativism. And even in the exit polls now, a majority of people have unfavorable views of both political parties. So negativism leads to cynicism, and it leads to blame. And I think now that the Republicans control half of the government, the very best that can happen is some policy will come out, and the worst that can happen is blame will be shared. And that won't be to the Republicans' advantage, as Mr. Marks noted, in 2016.
Simon, looking ahead to the 2016 election, no doubt the Hillary Clinton campaign watched what happened last night very closely. What will they be thinking right now? Does this give us any pointers?
Well, I think one of the things they'll be thinking is that Hillary's appearances down in Kentucky on behalf of Alison Grimes, who was running in the Senate race there, didn't help her very much. Look, I've been here a while, and I've covered a number of these election cycles, and I'm sanguine enough to know that anything that anybody says today about what happens in 2 years' time is probably not necessarily going to be borne out by the facts. It's not axiomatic that Hillary Clinton is going to be the Democratic Party's candidate. She's made stumbles on the campaign trail already, and as I say, at least in Kentucky, she didn't help Alison Grimes much. It's not axiomatic that the Republicans are going to be able to capitalize on this midterm triumph and march all the way to the White House. The gloves are just going to come off now, and the concentration, the Klieg lights, are going to come away from Barack Obama in the White House. I think he's going to have a very lonely 2 years as Republicans tear at each other, Democrats tear at each other, and then they go against one another, really tearing his legacy apart. And I think for him it's going to be a very, very uncomfortable period.
Simon Marks, Professor Stephen Wayne, thanks to both of you for joining us. And that's it for this edition of The Heat. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments and story ideas to theheat@cctv-america.com. And to continue the conversation, join us on Facebook at CCTV America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being here.
Being a cameraman for CCTV America, I can say that no 2 days are ever the same. I've been shooting for about 5 years now, and I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. Sometimes I'm filming here in Washington, other times abroad with one of our reporters. Life on the road can be demanding, but always exciting.